The invitation to Christmas dinner at my parents' house came with its usual passive-aggressive conditions. "Just bring yourself, honey," Mom had said over the phone. "We know money's tight for you right now." Money wasn't tight. I was a forensic accountant with my own consulting firm, specializing in financial fraud investigations for federal agencies. But my family had decided years ago that because I lived in a modest apartment and drove a 5-year-old Honda, I must be struggling financially. The truth was, I lived below my means by choice. My work had shown me how quickly wealth could disappear when built on unstable foundations, and I preferred security over showiness. But try explaining financial prudence to a family obsessed with appearances. My sister Jessica had married into money. Her husband Brad owned 3 car dealerships and never let anyone forget it. My brother Marcus worked in pharmaceutical sales and leased a BMW he couldn't afford to maintain the image of success. Both of them lived in McMansions with underwater mortgages, but they looked prosperous, which was all that mattered to my parents. I arrived at my childhood home on Christmas Eve to find the usual setup. The formal dining room table was set for 8 with Mom's best china and crystal. Place cards indicated where everyone should sit. Mom and Dad at the heads, Jessica and Brad on one side with their twin daughters, Marcus and his girlfriend on the other side. At the far end of the table, almost in the kitchen doorway, sat a single place setting with a paper plate and plastic cup. "What's this?" I asked, pointing to the obvious exile seating. "Oh, that's yours," Jessica said breezily, not looking up from her phone. "We thought you'd be more comfortable there." "More comfortable why?" "Well," Mom said carefully, "it's closer to the kitchen if you need to help serve. And honestly, the good china makes some people nervous. We don't want you to feel pressured." The implication was clear. I couldn't be trusted with expensive dinnerware, and my proper place was as unpaid help, not family. Marcus looked up from his conversation with Brad about golf club memberships. "Besides, you probably can't relate to most of our dinner conversation anyway. We were talking about vacation properties and investment portfolios." "I'm a forensic accountant," I reminded him. "I work with investment portfolios every day." "Sure, but that's different from actually having one," Brad said with his trademark condescending smile. "No offense, Emma, but there's a difference between understanding other people's money and having your own." I sat down at my assigned seat, the paper plate stark against the mahogany table. From here I couldn't even see most of the family clearly. I was essentially sitting at a separate table. During dinner, the conversation flowed around me as if I wasn't there. They discussed their children's private school tuition, upcoming trips to Europe, and the new luxury cars they were considering. When I tried to contribute, I was either ignored or patronized. "Emma, how's your little accounting business going?" Dad asked during dessert, the way someone might ask about a child's lemonade stand. "It's going well. I just finished a major investigation for the Treasury Department." "That's nice, dear," Mom said absently. "Jessica, tell us more about the kitchen renovation." After dinner, as I helped clear the table, I overheard Marcus talking to Brad in the living room. "I feel bad for Emma sometimes," Marcus was saying. "Living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car. Do you think we should set up some kind of fund for her?" "A charity fund?" Brad replied. "That's not a bad idea. Maybe we could all chip in, help her get back on her feet." "Get back on her feet from what?" I asked, entering the room. They both looked embarrassed at being overheard. "We're just worried about you," Marcus said. "You seem to be struggling." "I'm not struggling." "Emma, there's no shame in needing help," Jessica added, joining us. "We're family. If you need money." "I don't need money." "Then why do you live like you do?" she pressed. "That apartment, that car, shopping at Target instead of proper stores. If you're not poor, then what's your excuse?" The conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing. I glanced at the message and felt my stomach tighten. The text was from Agent Rebecca Chin at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. "Package delivered. Subjects took the bait. Moving to Phase 2 tomorrow." I'd been working this case for 8 months. The buildup. What my family didn't know was that their concern for my financial well-being was about to become irrelevant. For the past year, I'd been documenting a complex fraud scheme that reached into the heart of our own family. It had started innocently enough. Marcus had mentioned at last year's Christmas dinner that he was making incredible returns on some investments. Brad had boasted about a guaranteed real estate opportunity that was making him rich. Even my parents had casually mentioned their sudden ability to afford luxury vacations and expensive gifts. As a forensic accountant, I knew there was no such thing as guaranteed returns or risk-free investments that consistently outperformed the market. When family members started throwing around terms like exclusive opportunities and insider information, red flags went up. I'd started paying closer attention to their conversations. Marcus had mentioned a financial advisor named Douglas Reeves who was managing investments for select clients. Brad had talked about real estate deals that required cash payments and promised returns of 15 to 20% annually. My parents had invested their retirement savings in something they called a private equity opportunity that had already doubled their money in 6 months. None of this was possible through legitimate means. I discreetly started investigating Douglas Reeves and discovered he was running a classic Ponzi scheme. He was taking money from new investors to pay promised returns to existing investors, while siphoning off millions for himself. The real estate deals were fraudulent, properties that didn't exist or were vastly overvalued. The private equity opportunities were fictional companies with no assets. My family had invested over $800,000 collectively. Marcus had put in $200,000 from his sales commissions. Brad had invested $300,000 from the dealership profits. My parents had handed over their entire retirement savings, $250,000, plus a $50,000 loan they'd taken against their house. They were all victims, but they were also unwitting accomplices. Marcus was recruiting new investors from his pharmaceutical contacts. Brad was using his business reputation to legitimize the scheme. My parents were telling their friends at church about the amazing opportunity they'd discovered. The FBI had been tracking Reeves for 2 years, but they needed someone on the inside to gather evidence. When I'd approached them with my family's involvement, Agent Chin had seen an opportunity. "We need detailed financial records, recorded conversations, and evidence of how the recruitment works," she'd explained. "Can you get close enough to document everything?" I was family. For 8 months, I'd been gathering evidence while watching my relatives get deeper into the scheme. Every family gathering became an intelligence operation. I'd recorded conversations about investment returns, photographed documents they'd left lying around, and collected evidence of new investor recruitment. The hardest part was staying silent while they treated me like the family failure. While they discussed their financial success and looked down on my modest lifestyle, I was building a federal case that would destroy their lives. 3 weeks ago, I delivered the final evidence package to the FBI. The investigation was complete, warrants had been issued, and arrests were imminent. My family had no idea they were about to lose everything. Christmas Day revelation. Christmas morning brought the usual routine. We exchanged gifts in the living room, with the stark difference in gift quality highlighting the supposed economic divide in our family. Jessica gave me a $25 gift card to Target, since we know you shop there anyway. Marcus gave me a coupon book for local restaurants. My parents gave me a small pottery mug with "World's Okayest Daughter" printed on it. In return, they exchanged expensive watches, jewelry, and electronics with each other. Brad handed Marcus an envelope containing certificates for a golf weekend in Scottsdale. Jessica gave my parents a tablet loaded with photos from their recent Mediterranean cruise. "Don't feel bad, Emma," Jessica said, noticing my modest pile of gifts. "Maybe next year you'll be in a better position to participate." I smiled and said nothing. Christmas dinner was a repeat of the previous evening, with me relegated to the charity seat at the end of the table. The conversation centered on their continued investment success and plans for the coming year. "Douglas thinks we should expand our portfolios," Marcus announced over the main course. "He's identified some new opportunities in emerging markets. We're considering putting in another 100,000, Dad added. "The returns have been so consistent." "Brad's looking at a commercial real estate syndicate," Jessica chimed in. "Guaranteed 12% returns, fully secured." "You should consider investing too, Emma," Brad said magnanimously. "I mean, even a small amount would help you build some wealth. Maybe you could scrape together 5 or 10,000. "I'll think about it," I replied. "The minimum buy-in is actually 25,000, Marcus corrected. "But maybe we could spot you the difference. Consider it a family investment." They were literally offering to loan me money to give to the Ponzi scheme that was about to collapse and destroy them all. "That's very generous," I said carefully. The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner, with my family discussing their financial sophistication while treating me like a charity case who needed their guidance and support. At 3:47 p.m. the doorbell rang. Mom looked puzzled. Are we expecting anyone else? Dad went to answer the door while the rest of us remained at the table. We heard muffled conversation, then Dad's voice, sharp with confusion. I'm sorry, what did you say you're here about? The response was clear enough for all of us to hear. We're here about the financial crimes investigation. We have warrants for the arrest of Marcus Chin, Bradley Sullivan, and search warrants for these premises. The dining room went silent except for the clink of Brad's fork hitting his plate. Heavy footsteps approached the dining room, and 3 people in FBI windbreakers appeared in the doorway. Agent Chin, whom I recognized immediately, was flanked by 2 male agents with serious expressions. FBI, Agent Chin announced, displaying her badge. We need to speak with Marcus Chin and Bradley Sullivan. There must be some mistake, Jessica said, her voice climbing higher. We haven't done anything wrong. Sir, are you Marcus Chin? One of the male agents asked my brother. Marcus had gone pale. Yes, but I don't understand. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. The agent moved toward Marcus with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Marcus shouted. I'm an investor, not a criminal. Mr. Sullivan, Agent Chin addressed Brad. You're also under arrest on similar charges. Brad stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. What charges? What are you talking about? The Douglas Reeves investment scheme, Agent Chin said calmly. We have evidence that both of you recruited new investors while knowing or having reason to know that the investment opportunity was fraudulent. We didn't know anything. Jessica screamed. We were victims. Ma'am, we'll need to speak with you as well, Agent Chin said. You're not under arrest at this time, but we have questions about your involvement. The scene was chaos. Marcus was being read his rights while trying to explain that he'd only told friends about a good investment. Brad was demanding to call his lawyer while being handcuffed. My parents sat frozen in shock, watching their Christmas dinner turn into a crime scene. There must be some mistake, Mom kept repeating. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Agent Chin said. She looked around the room, her eyes settling on me. Is Emma Chin present? That's me, I said, standing up from my charity chair. Agent Chin, I'm the one who called you. The aftermath. The silence that followed was absolute. My family stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. Marcus, halfway to being handcuffed, froze completely. You called them? Jessica whispered. I'm the forensic accountant who's been building this case for 8 months, I said calmly. Every conversation we've had about investments, every document you've shown me, every new investor you've recruited, I've been documenting all of it for the FBI. Marcus found his voice first. You've been investigating us? I've been investigating the Ponzi scheme you all fell for, I corrected. The scheme you then helped perpetuate by recruiting new victims. Agent Chin stepped forward. Ms. Chin has been working with our Financial Crimes Division since March. Her evidence was instrumental in building this case. You betrayed your own family, Dad said, his voice hollow. I tried to save my family, I replied. I could have reported this to the FBI and walked away. Instead, I spent 8 months gathering evidence to make sure the prosecutors could distinguish between victims and perpetrators. I looked at each of them in turn. Marcus, you recruited 12 new investors from your pharmaceutical contacts. That's not being a victim, that's being an accomplice. Brad, you used your dealership's reputation to legitimize the scheme and brought in 6 new investors. That's criminal conspiracy. We didn't know it was fake. Marcus protested. You knew the returns were too good to be true, I said. You knew legitimate investments don't guarantee 15% returns with no risk. You knew, but you didn't care because you were making money. Agent Chin nodded to her colleagues who finished arresting Marcus and Brad. The individuals under arrest will be transported for processing. Mr. and Mrs. Chin, you'll need to come to the field office tomorrow for questioning. Are we under arrest too? Mom asked. Not right now, Agent Chin said. But we need to review your church recruiting. After Marcus and Brad were taken, Jessica sobbed. My parents sat frozen, Christmas dinner untouched. How long have you known? Dad asked. Since last Christmas. I warned you, but you dismissed me as poor Emma, who knew nothing about money. Jessica whispered, we'll lose everything, won't we? Yes. The money's gone. You might get 20 cents on the dollar. Marcus lost his savings and borrowed against commissions. Brad used business loans, risking his dealerships. My parents lost their retirement and faced foreclosure. Why didn't you just tell us? Mom asked. I tried. But you mocked me. Tonight you even said I didn't belong with successful family members. You sat me at the kids' table with a paper plate. The irony was cruel. While they lived on fake returns, I built a real business with savings. How much do you really have? Jessica asked. Enough, I said. All of it earned honestly. Agent Chin gave me his card. We'll need your testimony. After the FBI left, Mom asked, what happens now? Get lawyers. Marcus and Brad face prison. You and Dad might avoid charges if you cooperate. And us? What about family? Jessica asked. That depends if you've learned anything, I said, leaving the table for the last time. Dad called. Emma, don't leave like this. Why not? You've told me for years I don't belong at your table. Today you found out why. I drove home past luxury cars soon to be repossessed, past mansions soon foreclosed. At my apartment, I opened my laptop and wrote down everything from my case files. I knew justice had been served. But I wondered if my family would ever understand the difference between looking rich and being stable. 6 months later. Marcus got 18 months in prison. Brad got 2 years and lost his dealerships. Both were banned from finance. My parents avoided charges but lost their house, moving to a small rental and part-time jobs. Jessica divorced Brad, moved back with our parents and put her kids in public school. The family dynamics flipped. The charity case now had the only stable income and good credit. They all asked me for loans. I refused. How can you watch us struggle? Jessica cried. Like you watched me struggle, I said. You thought I deserved it. I did help, but on my terms. I paid for financial literacy classes, helped my parents find a safe rental, and funded a college trust for my nieces. But I never again sat at the charity chair. The FBI had proven who was really successful. The woman once given a paper plate now had the only secure seat at any table she chose. And that made all the difference.